Hey everybody, it's Mark Pereira out here on my land, just walking around, enjoying the crisp winter breeze that we're still getting in Florida. but the thing is, I wanted to talk to everybody today. I haven't been on here in a minute. I've been really busy trying to get this Ivan Runer book going, and we're almost done. It's getting very, very close. It's really, really pushing hard to get it done. A lot of the editing has been done. I'm just doing final looking at formatting and setting everything up and all that stuff. And so then hopefully within the next few weeks, we'll be starting the publishing process, which takes a few weeks, right? So anyway, the thing I wanted to talk about today is the divine order, right? And I think it's really important for me to discuss this because it really demonstrates the cornerstone of understanding the epic and the epic method and why it's so important. Because people look at these stories of the gods and they look at them and they see them as kind of like isolated events, and it allows them to cherry pick things and pull things out of the stories and make them what they want to be, right? And hail to everybody. Hello, how's it going? So they take a story, like let's take the story from Thrimskvida, right? Thrimskvida is a story when Thor, has his hammer stolen, and, he goes, he talks to Loki, and he's talking to the gods, and he's trying to figure out how to get his hammer back. And the plan becomes that he's going to dress up like Freya and go to Thrymheim after he learns that Thrym has the hammer, and then he's going to basically steal the hammer from him or get it back, and he kills all of them, whatever, and all that, right? So people have made the argument that because Thor dresses like a woman in this story, that this is some sort of gender fluid modernist, idea behind this, or something connected to this, that, and the other in this philosophy, right? Then another story that comes to mind, and I'll bring all this together in a minute, is the raping of Rind. Right now, this is a big one. This is the biggest, sort of the central cornerstone of a lot of these arguments and stuff like that, because it's a moral argument that's made that kind of denigrates the gods that people use when they're looking at it from the perspective of simply just that story, right? And not looking at it from the epic. Now, what happens in this story is that Balder is killed by Huther. Huther is set up, and he's basically framed for the murder of Balder. The gods have gone around and they have basically looked at every prophecy that there is possible. They've probably, Voluspa is probably them speaking to Erd herself, right? And, we see the end of Hinlujod. Some people call it Voluspa in Skama. That's not a real poem. That's something scholars made up. But they speak to seers and prophets and all these different people to try to understand what's going to happen and what their choices are, can they deal with this and what can they do, right? And the only result that they get in every single prophecy is that the son Vali must be born, and he must be born because he's the only one that's going to convey blood revenge for the death of Balder. No one else can do this. No one else will do this, right? And the thing about this, right, and I want to put this into perspective for people in the modern world. Now, in the modern world, we tend to think of sexual crimes to be like really bad. We really consider them to just be terrible. I'm one of those people. I consider sexual crimes to just be awful, right? But back in those times, such things weren't really that prevalent, We do see some laws that reference sexual crimes and stuff like that, but the main crimes that people had, the things that they were really focused on, were crimes against family, crimes against kin. Like parricide, the murder of a family member, was considered like the worst thing you could do, okay? And one of the biggest laws they had, something that you see prevalent in all the sagas and all the law codes and all these different things, was the law of blood revenge, which later became Weirgild, where someone would pay compensation for killing somebody in honorable combat. Murder was a different thing, right? But you had to enact blood revenge. It was like one of the highest laws. And so this story is about blood revenge. The whole thing is about blood revenge. And what happens is Odin, goes to Rind, and he basically disguises himself in many different forms, and makes himself like, shows that he's the greatest leader, the greatest warrior, the greatest hero. He's the richest, he's the best, and all that stuff. And in every case, she rejects him. Now, it's possible that there was sorcery behind that, some kind of spell or something like that she was under that kept her from accepting him as her spouse or whatever, her mate. And so Odin ends up, putting her under a spell or a counter spell or whatever you want to call it. And he ends up having his way with her in order to give birth to the son Vali. Now, Odin ends up paying consequences for this. He gets banished from Asgard, and the only way that he is able to return is he basically saved the whole world. The Jotuns are planning to destroy Asgard. They ask Odin to join forces with him, and he says no, and he goes and warns the Vanir. It's a lot. A lot of this is in Saxo, so a lot of people aren't familiar with these stories. But anyway, the thing about this, right? There's a lot to this. You can say that Odin's committed adultery, that Odin's committed rape, that Odin's done all these different things, and he's just committed all these crimes, and it really shows you that the gods are, that they're okay with these things. They're okay with you doing these things, right? And that's not the case at all, okay? Now, one of the thing that these stories have in common, and the thing that the thing that these stories have in common, and the thing that the epic all shows consistency with, right, is that the gods are in every case protecting the divine order. Everything that they do, everything that they're working around, everything that they create, they build, they fight for, right, it all is consistent within the epic of them building, creating, forming, developing, and maintaining, and then protecting the divine order. Everything is about that. And it's like all the laws supersede that. The divine protection of the divine order is the most important thing. It's the order of the cosmos, order of everything. Because if they don't protect it, then everything collapses. That's Ragnarok, right? And so in the end, they fail in that protection, right? But that's what they're doing. They're trying to maintain that as long as they possibly can, because they know that the forces of chaos, the forces of evil, the forces of darkness, whatever you want to call them, are coming, and they're trying to tear everything apart, and they eventually succeed. But they know that there's also going to be rebirth. So at the end, the gods do win. They do maintain that order, and the next cycle is supposed to be better. And so it basically means that like these powers of evil, these powers of darkness have to come to fruition. They have to fully blossom in order to just lay waste to everything, and then the gods can start over and rebuild and reforge and remake everything, right? And so all of these things that you see, these events are not isolated. They're part of a grander scheme of things. They're part of something that connects to this entire idea. And it all boils down to like when you see Thor fighting Hrungnir, or you see, Thor in all the battles he's in, Utgard, Loki's, and all this stuff. Odin goes around and does these contests with giants and wins their heads and stuff like that. All of these events, every single thing you see, it's like at the very first verse of Voluspa, when they're basically saying, we'll recount the deeds of, one of them says the Valfather or of the Woe-Father. So it could either be the deeds of Loki, who's done all these things and made all these calamities take place and all these disasters happen, or it's of Allfather, of all these different things that him and his family are going through in these cycles in order to maintain the divine order, the sacred order of the universe, right? And so everything is about that. Everything is centered around that. And so it's important. It's not to say that the gods get excused for bad behavior. It's saying that these things that they're doing for a reason. There's a purpose behind them, and that purpose is considered higher than other things, So like the one thing that you can never ever point out, and no one can do this, like you can make comparisons in maybe some of the Greek mythology or something like that, when the gods are doing things for pleasure, for their own enjoyment, right? But that never happens in our lore. There's never any time when they're saying, Thor got in a dress because he really likes wearing dresses. It doesn't say that. There's not like saying Odin goes and does this to Rind because he really wanted to rape her and he just thought she was hot or something like that. There's nothing like that. There's nothing that says that, nothing that connects to that, nothing that relates to that, no words, no word play you can make up that a lot of these people try to do, all these hoops and things they like to jump through. Everything that they do has a purpose behind it, and that purpose is protecting the entire world, the universe, the worlds of the gods. So like, take for a second, okay? Say like you found out tomorrow that, just say like government officials or whatever, find out that there's a plot to basically set off some nukes on the planet, all right? And a person has to break in there, and in order to do so, say it's like a spy movie or something, like a person has to dress up like a woman and go in there and get into the certain area, get the codes, and basically save the world, all right? Kind of like a modern movie might portray, all right? Now, does that mean that guy likes wearing dresses, or does it mean that guy's going to stop a nuclear war, you know? And that's the thing. That's how it was. You have to look at it from that perspective, because these things were the highest things at the time. And so we see in our world today, we can literally just push a button and the whole world's gone. Like everything's just turned to ash, it's destroyed and all that stuff. So we can see it on that higher perspective today in a technological sense. But you have to look at it from the perspective of our ancestors at the time, that this order was everything. It was nature, it was the world around them, it was their families, their kin, all the people that they knew, all the people they related to. And so allowing that destruction to take place and spread across the planet that was not okay. And so you have to look at it from that perspective and understand that that's what the gods work for. That's what they're designed for. That's what they're doing. They bring forth an order. And when we perform ritual, we're bringing forth an order. When we pray to the gods, we're praying for their blessings, for our order. We're praying for them to help keep us from harm and keep these forces that are going to tear everything apart from doing it right now, because we want to try to keep that at bay for as long as possible, And so that's the perspective none of these things in the sources are an excuse for degenerate behavior. Nothing, And the fact that we have these laws, and people ask me like, how do you correlate one with the other? You have all these laws and these things that are mentioned, like, about like adultery and murder and thievery and all these different things. And you have them in these sources like Voluspa and Regensmal, and, you don't oath break and all this stuff. But then you see the gods doing this stuff. Well, it's because the gods are trying to keep you from being completely annihilated, and that's that. And it's like you're having to protect everything. And so it's like a higher thing. It's something that you can't do because you can't do it, like physically. You can't, most of the people on the planet, the actions that they do on a day-to-day basis from here since time immemorial is not significant towards every single thing on the planet. And so that's what they're seeing. They're seeing the gods doing things that are significant to every single thing on the planet. And so it's a higher calling, it's a higher reaching, it's a higher purpose behind everything that you do, And it's not just bad behavior for the sake of bad behavior. It's just saying that these forces of evil, these forces of chaos, they put the gods into these situations that they have to deal with. And, sometimes they have to work around things. Sometimes they have to bend the rules. Sometimes they have to do things that they don't want to otherwise do, but it has to be done. The job has to be done. So people looking for life lessons in this stuff like that are just completely missing the point, because they don't understand the epic. They don't understand the purpose behind it, and they're just cherry picking things in order to fit some sort of agenda. And that's a lot of people are guilty of that. And I'm not trying to point at any political side or idea or anything like that. I'm just saying that that's not, none of that stuff has anything to do with what you're looking at, all right? And you have to understand the epic and look at the epic and know what you're seeing and sort of discern all of it, then try to cherry pick a specific instance and then pull out the instance from that instance and say, this is what's happening because I like that. That's not what's taking place. So that's the perspective you always have to look at it from. You have instances, like in Greek mythology and stuff like that very specifically state that, Zeus would seduce human women, and he liked doing so. And it brought him pleasure, and he enjoyed it, and he had many children on earth because of that. There is no such case of that in any of our sources anywhere. In every single case, every time the gods are doing something that involves, having relations with each other or involves anything, it's always connected to something that's specifically connected to the divine order, to things that the gods are doing that are trying to protect us and help us and keep everything in motion, So that's just something that we need to keep in mind. That's something that we need to keep in perspective, because that also makes our prayers to the gods more significant, because you see that. You start to see the larger picture. You start to see that they're there keeping you from all of these things that are out there to destroy you. And there's like billions and billions of things out there in the universe that could destroy Earth, could destroy all of us and all that stuff. And so it's the idea that we have like these divine protectors who have our backs, and so we worship them and we pray to them and we sacrifice to them and all that stuff based on that idea. So that's what I wanted to get out there and talk to people about, because a lot of people have been asking me about that, and they're trying to understand, like, why is this allowed, and why does this happen, why does this take place, and all that stuff. And that's why. That's literally and you can just prove that all day long. This stuff, other stuff people say when they're cherry picking stuff is easily disintegrated. It's just more new age garbage that they just blah, blah, blah. And when you start to actually look at the epic and understand the sources, you see that this is actually what is taking place. All right. So thanks everybody for listening. Have a great night, and know that, the Ivan Runer book is, we're working really hard on it, and we're going to be coming out with it soon. All right. Good night.